Have you ever noticed how Russian tanks often explode the moment they're hit? In most cases, the crew inside has almost no chance of survival. That's because their ammo storage isn't protected. Unlike Western designs, it sits right under the turret and instantly catches fire on impact, causing a massive explosion. These two Russian soldiers are seen quickly exiting their T-90M tank. The tank appears to be stuck in a crater, likely formed by earlier artillery strikes. It had already taken light damage from an FPV drone earlier, but still remained intact. A Ukrainian FPV drone begins circling the area. It quickly scans the tank. Without hesitation, the drone dives in and strikes the exact weak point. A split second later, a massive internal explosion rips through the tank from inside. Although the crew escaped moments earlier and managed to survive, the tank, worth over $5 million, is now completely disabled and useless on the battlefield. In this footage, a Russian T-90M tank is spotted by a Ukrainian drone team. The FPV reconnaissance drone locks in and begins the chase. The first drone strikes the tank from behind, but the tank keeps moving, trying to stay in control. A second drone follows and hits the turret. The impact shakes the entire vehicle. It begins to swerve, losing control fast. Then comes the third drone. It scans the top of the tank, hovers for a moment, and then strikes. A massive explosion follows. Fire erupts from deep inside the tank. In cases like this, the chance of survival for the crew is almost zero. They're likely killed instantly. This Russian T-90M tank was moving off the main route, firing constantly at Ukrainian positions. The crew had no idea what was waiting ahead. As soon as the tank got back on the main path, it rolled over a hidden mine. At that very moment, a massive explosion took place. The tank was instantly engulfed in flames. The ammunition inside caught fire, and within seconds, a $4 million Russian tank was wiped out in a single moment. A Ukrainian drone operator spotted a Russian tank in the Kursk region. The tank was shielded with thick metal plating, and its front was reinforced with a grid of metal rods to block drone attacks. But none of that mattered. As soon as the drone hit, a massive explosion tore through the vehicle. This precise strike was carried out by the 46th Air Mobile Brigade. On the same day, the same team destroyed more Russian tanks, also reinforced and armored, and several other combat vehicles. All of them were moving toward Pokrovsk. The brigade took them down one by one. In this scene, a drone approaches an abandoned Russian tank. On impact, there's a small explosion. Then, smoke starts rising from inside. Moments later, fire breaks out near the front of the tank. That's when the ammo inside catches fire. A burst of flames erupts and the whole tank goes up in flames. Within seconds, the tank is fully engulfed. The ammunition inside finishes the job, completely destroying it. When a Russian tank takes a direct hit from an FPV drone or anti-tank mine, the result is often the same: a violent explosion followed by a fireball, and in many cases, the complete destruction of the vehicle. But why do Russian tanks explode so easily, especially compared to their Western counterparts? The answer lies deep in their internal design philosophy, one that dates back to the Soviet era. Most Russian tanks, including the T-72, T-80, and even the newer T-90M, use what's called an autoloader carousel system. In simple terms, the ammunition is stored right under the turret, inside the main crew compartment. That means the shells, propellants, and explosives are sitting directly beneath the crew members, exposed and unprotected. So when a mine detonates beneath the tank, or a drone hits from above, it often ignites the ammo rack. The result is catastrophic. A massive internal explosion, the turret blown off, and the crew stands almost no chance of survival. Now, here's another example. A Russian T-90M tank was spotted in an open field. It had a metal shield in the front and a radar jamming system. On paper, it looked well protected, but the drone operator noticed something. The cockpit hatch was open. The drone approached carefully and dropped an American-made M67 grenade right into the turret. At first, just a small blast. It looked like nothing serious. But then, the heat began to spread. Flames slowly started inside. The ammo inside the tank caught fire. Seconds later, the whole tank was burning. Then, the ammo exploded, and it looked like fireworks going off. Moments later, a second explosion followed. Western tanks like that penetrates the hull. The crew is protected. That's why you often see Western tanks survive multiple hits, with the crew making it out alive. Abrams or the Leopard 2 are built differently. They place ammunition in a separate armored compartment behind blast-proof doors, while Russian tanks turn into fireballs with a single strike. Another factor is weight. Russian tanks are built to be faster and cheaper, weighing around 40 to 48 tons compared to Western tanks that often weigh over 60 tons. That weight difference comes at a price. Russian tanks lack sufficient layered armor, especially on the top and rear, precisely where modern drones and top attack missiles strike. They may be agile, but they're not durable under modern battlefield conditions. Ukraine has taken full advantage of this design flaw. FPV drones guided by real-time surveillance strike the weakest parts of these tanks. Meanwhile, anti-tank mines planted along key routes do the rest, causing chain explosions from underneath. In today's war, survivability matters more than speed. And as these clips show, Russia's outdated tank doctrine prioritizing speed over crew safety is proving devastatingly ineffective against modern warfare tactics. Some T-90 tanks don't explode right away after a drone hits them. At first, there's just a small blast, nothing big. But then, fire slowly spreads inside. As it reaches the ammo section, the whole tank begins to burn. You can see the flames growing bit by bit. In many cases, when the grenade or bomb lands inside the tank, the heat builds up. The drone operator sometimes needs to drop more than one grenade, especially if the first one doesn't reach deep. Sometimes they even use FPV drones to strike again. Now, when the fire finally reaches the stored ammunition, and if it hasn't been used yet, a massive explosion can follow. And just like that, a tank worth over $3 million turns into smoke and metal scrap. Nothing left. Sometimes the blast is so big, it looks like a fireball swallowing the tank in seconds. When we talk about Ukrainian tanks on the modern battlefield, one thing becomes immediately clear. They've learned to adapt, upgrade, and survive. Unlike Russian tank designs, Ukrainian forces now operate a mix of Soviet-era tanks, like the T-64, and modernized Western tanks, such as the Leopard 2 and Challenger 2. But here's the key difference: survivability. Ukrainian tanks, especially the Western-supplied ones, are built with crew protection in mind. Their ammunition is separated from the crew compartment. In many cases, it's stored in armored compartments with blowout panels on top. That means when the tank takes a direct hit, the ammo may explode, but the crew still has a fighting chance to survive. And in war, survival isn't just luck, it's engineering. Now contrast that with Russian tanks. The T-72, T-80, and even the so-called modern T-90. All three share a fatal design flaw: the autoloader. Russian tanks were designed to be light, fast, and cheap to mass produce. To reduce crew size, they introduced the autoloader system, where shells are stored in a circular carousel directly underneath the turret and right beneath the crew. Sounds efficient, maybe on paper, but in combat, it's a death trap. If you're really enjoying our commentary and the way we break down these battlefield moments, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And tell us in the comments, do you think Russia can keep up with this kind of drone warfare? Or is it already too late? Alright, now let's get back to the topic. When an anti-tank mine, FPV drone, or javelin missile hits the turret, it often penetrates through and ignites the stored ammunition. And because there's no armored wall between the ammo and the crew, the result is instant, a catastrophic explosion. The turret flies into the air like a soda can lid under pressure. This is why Russian tanks are often seen exploding in a single blast. There's no blowout panel, no separation, and no second chances. Ukrainians have seen this weakness and adjusted. Even their older tanks like the T-64BV have received upgrades, reactive armor, thermal sights, and in some cases, modified storage. And with the arrival of NATO tanks, the bar for protection has risen sharply. For example, Leopard 2 tanks store ammunition in the rear compartment behind armored doors. If it's hit, the blast is directed outward, not inward, keeping the crew alive. Meanwhile, Russia kept copying the same fatal design across generations. The T-80 was rushed into production for speed. The T-90, despite its flashy name, is just an upgraded T-72 at its core, still with the same vulnerable ammo layout. Instead of redesigning the tank to solve the core problem, Russia simply added more armor or active protection systems like Arena or Shtora. But none of that fixes the ammo in the turret flaw. And that's what we're seeing now in real time. One by one, Russian tanks are taken out by relatively low-cost drones or mines. It's not just poor tactics, it's poor engineering. Russia built these machines for shock and speed, not sustainability. And now, in the age of smart weapons and drone warfare, that design choice is costing them tanks, crews, and strategic ground. One after another, the same pattern repeats. A drone locks on, a sudden strike, and a towering explosion. Russian tanks are being picked off with stunning precision, and it's no accident. This is modern warfare exposing outdated doctrine, and we're watching it unfold frame by frame. Today's battlefield is dominated by drone eyes in the sky. Ukrainian operators use real-time surveillance drones to hunt, mark, and track targets from miles away. Then, using FPV drones or laser-guided systems, they deliver hits with pinpoint accuracy, usually to the weakest parts of the tank. And that's where the second problem begins. Russian tanks were never built to fight against the sky. Their top armor is paper-thin, designed for protection against ground-level threats. But drones strike from above, and that top hatch or engine deck offers almost no resistance. Even a small explosive can trigger devastating results. Look closely. Many of these tanks are alone, exposed, and unsupported. No infantry, no recon, no overwatch. In modern combat, a tank without support is not a weapon, it's a target. Ukrainian forces exploit this by isolating vehicles, waiting for the right moment, and then striking when they're most vulnerable. Sometimes it doesn't even take a kill shot. Many of these tanks are first immobilized by a track hit. The tread is blown off, and the tank can't move. In the next minute or two, a second strike comes. This is intentional. The tank is frozen in place like bait, just waiting for the next blow to land. Disable, then destroy. It's become a standard tactic. Then there's the cook-off, one of the most terrifying sights on the battlefield. After a hit, flames rise from inside, and one by one the internal shells begin to ignite. These aren't just fires, they're chain reactions, each explosion feeding the next, until the tank becomes a furnace of ammunition. In seconds, it's all over. No crew survives that, but the destruction goes beyond steel. There's a psychological toll on Russian troops. When they see tanks explode from above, erupting in fireballs, it spreads fear. Many now hesitate to ride in tanks at all. In some units, there have been reports of abandonment, of tanks being left behind intact because soldiers would rather walk than be burned alive. What makes this even more effective is coordination. These hits aren't random. One drone surveys, another drone strikes, or sometimes a laser marker designates the target while anti-tank teams move into place. Precision doesn't come from luck. It comes from synchronized action between eyes in the sky and hands on the ground. Faced with this, Russian forces have tried to adapt, but their solutions are desperate. Many tanks are now seen covered in metal cages, logs, spare tracks, and even shopping cart frames. They call it cope cages, improvised shields meant to block drones. But none of it works. The drones find gaps or hit from underneath. or simply blow through the armor altogether. These last-minute add-ons only prove one thing: they know how vulnerable they are, and they're running out of options. And while the battlefield burns, the bigger picture tells the real story. This isn't just one tank lost, or even 10. These are entire armored units being ground down piece by piece. Dozens of tanks disabled, dozens destroyed. Each one represents a gap in the Russian front line and a morale victory for Ukraine. This is what happens when a 21st century army meets a 20th century tank doctrine. No support, no redesign, just steel boxes sent into open terrain under the eyes of drones against precision-guided fire. Explosions like these aren't just the end of a tank, they're the end of an old way of war.